We are back in the book of Habakkuk, or the English pronunciation Habakkuk. It was just much easier to say, I think, Habakkuk. I was going to read from my ordination Bible this morning, which was the Revised King James Version, and I had some difficulty doing it. It's not as, if you're not used to reading from the King James on a regular basis, it doesn't flow as well. So I grabbed the Pew Bible this morning. You can find it, Habakkuk, on 933. If you are using a Pew Bible, it is an ESV version, which I think is probably much easier to understand. We'll be reading verses 5 through 17 this morning. You remember last week, Habakkuk was having a problem with waiting. And this week, it will be anxiety and fear. So let us begin reading here, verse 5 through 17. He says, "Look among the nations and see and wonder and be astounded." It's the Lord talking. He's answering Habakkuk from last week. "For I am doing a work in your days that you would not believe if told. For behold, I am raising up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, who march through the breadth of the earth, to seize dwellings not their own. They are dreaded and fearsome. Their justice and dignity go forth from themselves. Their horses are swifter than leopards, for more fierce than the evening wolves. Their horsemen press proudly on. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle, swift to devour. They all come for violence, all their faces forward. They gather captives like sand. At kings they scoff, and at rulers they laugh. They laugh at every fortress, for they pile up earth and take it. Then they sweep by like the wind and go on. Guilty men whose own might is their God." Habakkuk's second complaint. "Are you not from everlasting, O Lord my God, my Holy One? We shall not die. O Lord, you have ordained them as a judgment, and you, O Rock, have established them for reproof. You who are of purer eyes than to see evil and cannot look at wrong, why do you idly look at traitors and remain silent when the wicked swallow up the man more righteous than he? You make mankind like the fish of the sea, like crawling things that have no ruler. He brings all of them up with a hook. He drags them out with his net. He gathers them in his dragnet. So he rejoices and is glad. Therefore he sacrifices to his net and makes offerings to his dragnet. For by them he lives in luxury, and his food is rich. Is he then to keep on emptying his net and mercilessly killing nations forever?" May God bless this reading of this portion of his holy word. You remember Habakkuk in verses 1 through 4 is telling us of the situation of the southern kingdom finally falling. Remember, the northern kingdom has already fallen. They've already been taken away. Now here it is, the southern kingdom. And Habakkuk isn't addressing the people, he's addressing the Lord on this. He's waiting for an answer to prayer. The pressure was on, chaos was rampant, and it appeared like God wasn't doing anything. Have you ever experienced that in your life? Where you didn't think the Lord was doing a thing? Where you actually got down on your knees and you prayed, and it felt like the prayers were just pinging off the walls. They weren't going beyond the ceiling of your house. if you're honest, we've all probably had dryness like that spiritually, but I assure you that even when it doesn't look like God's doing anything, he very much is at work. We just don't really see it. In verse 2, there's been praying and growing weary by the prophet. He says, how long is this going to go on? Do you recall him saying that? Lord, how long is this going to go on? Which means this has been going on for a long time. And sometimes you and I experience things in our life that just seem like it's never ending. It just seems like it's just going to go on and it's going to go on. Habakkuk is experiencing the same thing. Something we need to remember while all this chaos is taking place comes from Deuteronomy 28, about what's going on right now with Habakkuk and the people here. Now remember, this is not foreigners that he is talking about bringing judgment on. This is the church. This is his people that he's talking about. But what he told his people in Deuteronomy 28 is that God established a covenant with his people. He promises blessings upon them if they're obedient. And likewise, disobedience would bring curses and judgment. Have you ever had people, if you don't used to watch Live PD or anything like that, there's a lot of people on there that really aren't sorry for what they did, but they're very, very sorry they got to go to jail. And that's the way people are. They're not repentant for what they're doing. They just don't want to suffer any consequences because of it. Here we got a whole bunch of people that's like that in Habakkuk's day. You don't find a whole lot of people repenting for what they're doing. And God's already told them. He gave them fair warning. If you do this, I'll bless you. If you're obedient to me, I'll bless you. If you don't, I'm going to bring judgment on you. And they have willfully, deliberately done it anyway. So now it's coming. When things have become chaotic, there are many times God's people who are in fact, they're being disobedient. In other words, when you see havoc many times within churches, it's because God's people are being disobedient. Have you ever heard of a church that actually split over the color of the carpet in the church? It has happened. Churches splitting over the color of the drapes or over petty things. You listen to many times what splits many churches, it's petty. It's petty things that takes place. That's disobedience, folks. No church should ever split over something like that. I guarantee you that's disobedience. That's just an example that many of us have probably experienced over time. Habakkuk is saying, where are you, Lord? His problem was with God's timing and with God's tolerance. What was it, the sons of thunder, James and John said, Lord, do you want us to call down fire on these people? Right now. The Lord has to say, no, that's not the way I do business right now. Habakkuk's wanting to see something. He simply didn't understand what was going on, and many times we don't understand what's going on in our own lives. We see what's happening, we don't know what's behind it. Or who's behind it. That's another question. I think Job, the book of Job, is one that shows us that many times Satan can be behind what's going on. Now, you might remember me mentioning that Habakkuk was a contemporary of some other people. They all lived during the same time period. This isn't just Habakkuk carrying on here. During this time period, you had Jeremiah, Zephaniah, and Nahum. All of them lived at the same time and in the same area. So the Lord's got a whole lot of preachers bringing this message. It's not just Habakkuk trying to get over a PA speaker and trying to make this happen. The Lord's got some other people here. So remember that. He's got these folks as well. I mean, Jeremiah spoke directly to King Jehoiakim in Jeremiah 22:19, and he told him he was going to get the burial of a donkey. Now, most of you people probably come from an agricultural background. You know what it's like to bury a donkey or a horse or something like that. You know, what he means here is going to be unceremonial. It's not going to be a crowd gathering. Nobody's going to miss you type thing, is what he was telling this king. Had a preacher that was so bad at his golf game that the guy they always paired him up with, he said, you know, you're an absolute wretch. He says, when you die, nobody's going to miss you. He said, well, at least I get a car. This guy had a donkey. He didn't even have that. If that gives you an idea how bad off he was. Now, it says oracle in some translations here, the oracle of Habakkuk. But really a better translation for it is a burden. This is a burden for Habakkuk. It's not something he really wants to hear. Have you ever carried a burden like that? Somebody has a secret and they don't want you to tell it. Maybe they're terminally ill or something, but they don't want you to tell the rest of the family or something like that. It's a burden. It presses in on you. Now, Habakkuk is just a regular guy. He's just trying to live a regular life in a very difficult time. And in these 3 chapters are the message that God has given him about what's going to be going on at the time. You know, I think we tend to forget about these prophets and people that we read about in the Bible. They're just people. They're human, flesh and blood, just like you and me. They have their problems. Do you think that Joseph being locked up in a prison for something he didn't do for 10 years didn't have an effect on him? Of course it did, because he's human. Sometimes when we pray, the answer is not what we want to hear. I know I've sure experienced that. There are a lot of answers to prayer that I just didn't really want to hear. It wasn't what I wanted. God answers his complaint by saying, look among the nations and see and wonder and be astounded. For I'm doing a work in the days that you would not believe if I told you. You don't see it, Habakkuk, but I'm doing something. I'm about to do something that everybody's about to see. See, the Lord's already had this worked out. He just didn't at one time call the Chaldeans to come on down. He's working all this. He's getting them ready. You wouldn't believe it if I told you, he says. The description goes on in verses 6 through 11, telling of the Babylonians' fierceness, telling them what they're dealing with here. This is a scary bunch. Horses that are swifter than cats. Bad people. It'd be tantamount to when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait back in the 90s. Tiny little country facing an army 10 times their size coming in. The Kuwaitis were terrified. Something like this. There's no indication that God, in his response, that there would be a separating the obedient from the disobedient. In other words, the good people are suffering right along with the bad. Anytime havoc happens in a church, and you might only have just a few people causing all the havoc, the ones that aren't causing anything are suffering right along with the others. In other words, you don't sin in a vacuum many times. That's true for a family unit. That's true for a church. It's true for a nation. So there's not much comfort offered to Habakkuk at this point. If anything, he's perplexed about what's going on. In any kind of a company or anything like that, you find leadership many times or people that are making decisions that affects everybody. You know, what's the proverbial catch of bean counters? They say we got to cut so many people, they're not considering anything else. It just it affects everybody. From Habakkuk's perspective, not only is God taking too long for an answer, but his answer that starts in verse 5 makes things even more confusing. Have you ever received an answer to prayer that just did not make sense? R.C. Sproul, if you're familiar with him, was teaching at his alma mater. He loved it. It was his dream job. And he got a teaching position opened up. This was a temporary position, but this was a permanent position he was being offered at his alma mater. He said he loved every leaf on every tree and every blade of grass on that place. Loved it. And then another dean from another college called him, offering him a job. He said, well, I really don't want to do that or whatever. He said, well, look, just pray about it. Give me a week. Pray about it. He said, okay, well, I owe him that. Well, they had been praying about it for about a week. And he was sure, well, if the Lord wanted me to do this, it would have already come by now. He even had students come over to his house, and they'd pray all night about it. Heard no word. So he said, tomorrow morning I'm going to get up and go tell the dean that I'm going to accept the position right here. In the middle of the night, the phone is ringing, about 3 a.m. So he's getting up, he's about half asleep, and he answers the phone. He said, yeah, hello? He said, R.C., this is Rick Abinale. Who? You know, Rick Abinale, we lived in the neighborhood together growing up. Well, he said he actually played with Rick's friend, not really him, but he knew him. He said, well, yeah. He said, what do you need? You know, it's 3 a.m. in the morning, you know. Hadn't heard from him in years. He said, look, I'm an airplane pilot. I just landed here in a layover. I'm here in the hotel room, and I can't get it off my mind. The Lord keeps pounding me with this, that you've got to go take that job at that other university. He said, how'd you know about that? He said, I didn't. He said, all I know is that I've had it on my mind, and I can't go to sleep, and I'm telling you, do with it what you want. He said, well, thanks a lot. So, you know, you get a phone call from somebody you hadn't heard from in years, and they tell you that you need to take the job that they didn't even know about. You got to figure God's all in that, right? So he said they called the university, told them they were coming. They obeyed. They packed the car and went there. And he said it was 2 of the most miserable years he'd ever spent in his life. It did not make sense. Did not make sense. All that. Had his dream job, and he goes, and it's kind of a hell on earth for him for 2 years. And he said, to this day, I can't tell you why that was. He said, unless that was the only way God was going to get me out of my university. And arranged things in a way that got him to where he eventually founded Ligonier, you know. Sometimes what God tells you does not make sense. Now here's something to take with you and write it down if you can't remember it. When you are praying about something and God gives you an answer and it just doesn't make sense, but you know it come from him, he's all in it. So, now, I've had that happen to me. It's not pleasant. But if something happens and it doesn't make sense, God is probably all in it. Well, Habakkuk sees all this happening, and he's kind of like, this doesn't seem fair. Why do the good have to suffer along with the bad, Lord? This just doesn't seem to be fair here. Lord, I know I'm bad, but those people are worse. The ones that you bring in to come clean us out, they're worse. Lord, you're pure, but you're using them to discipline us? It's just not fair, is what he's saying. And you kind of thought that you were probably the only people that thought that way. I've certainly thought that way. Lord, this isn't fair. This isn't right. I don't understand this. This is normally not the way you work. Habakkuk thought the same thing well over 6,000 years ago. Now, here's something to remember. All these things are unfolding before Habakkuk, but it's all under God's control. Nothing's happening that's not under his control. Remember, we gave the illustration last week of waiting on God. Waiting is not pleasant and it's not uneasy, but he's only going to allow into your life what it takes to chisel away everything that's not you. I gave the illustration of Michelangelo sculpting David. He chiseled away everything that wasn't David. He's going to chisel everything away in your life that is not God, that is not Christ-like. And when things are happening and you can't explain it, he's doing something. But it's all under his control. It's not out of his control. See, the more scary thought would be that it's not under God's control. That's scary. If chaos is going on and I don't think God has anything to do with it, that's pretty terrifying. But if I know in my mind that Christ is in absolute control of everything that's touching my life, everything that's going on, I know he's orchestrating something, he's moving towards something, not away from it, then I can rest in what's going on. I might not understand it, but if I acknowledge and know that he is in complete control of it, I can breathe. I can rest. God says he's going to do something on the world stage here. And he was using the Babylonians, sending for young men to be his witness in Babylon. Who was those men? Now, he's bringing discipline. So he's sending all these Chaldeans down. He's going to grab the Israelites. He's going to take them all the way to Babylon. But the Lord had a ringer. Who did he send with them? He sent 4 people. One was called Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And those men of God would be a thorn in the side of Nebuchadnezzar the entire time he had them there. And an influence of God's unrelenting power. Remember what happened to Nebuchadnezzar further down the line. He chewed grass for 7 years as a madman. God broke him. So yes, it was bad. All the people got taken away out of their land as a form of discipline. But God sent his men into the mix to make a powerful difference in an ungodly nation. Don't think for a minute that these men didn't face challenges. They were actually faced with death several times. Daniel in the lion's den, the other 3 being thrown into a fiery furnace. Now, how do we respond today? When these 3 men were kind of like, you need to bow before this God or we're going to throw you into this fiery furnace. God always has a way of working these things out. He says, bow before this idol or we're going to kill you. The same thing's happening today with Christians. You don't believe it is? How is it that you have people saying, bow before the ordination of same-sex people in the pulpit or we'll destroy your reputation? Bow before the God of aborted babies or we're going to destroy your reputation. We're going to destroy you. We're going to harass you. It's the same type thing. Bow before these gods or we're going to take you out. They might not physically kill you, but they attack you. And they attack you, and they're absolutely relentless on this. Did you know I got thrown out of a seminary? The Army actually sent me to a seminary to learn to teach ethics at the engineer school at Fort Leonard Wood. And the seminary that I went to was probably one of the most leftist and liberal seminaries on the face of the planet. I didn't know it. I wouldn't have went there if I'd known it. But once you're in, you're in. You have to finish the degree right there. I wrote something against a liberal theologian and got crucified for it. Flunked out of the class. Had to retake another class. And this very liberal leftist professor waited until the week of graduation to call me in. So I had no recourse and said, "You flunk." And I left without a degree. Now don't get me wrong, I already have my master's and all this. This was an additional one to help teach ethics. But that's how vicious these people are. And when they tell you to bow before their gods, that's what they're going to do for you. Now see, that pretty much ended any promotion I could ever have in the Army at that point. I mean, look, I already had 35 years in, you know. It wasn't going to kill me or something like that. But I'd never make lieutenant colonel, and if you don't make lieutenant colonel, you have to get out when you reach your 20 years, you know. So God was gracious, and he protected me against this evil man. But this particular seminary is cranking out ministers year after year that endorse all the stuff I just mentioned to you. So this is a very real fight even today is what I'm trying to say. Now, what's the response? The response that you and I should make is the same response that Hadrach, Shadrach, and Abednego made to King Nebuchadnezzar, a fearsome man. Listen to this. This comes from Daniel chapter 3, verses 16 through 18. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to King Nebuchadnezzar. This is when he said, "Look, you either bow or I'm going to throw you in the fire." "King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God that we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he doesn't, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods and worship the image of gold you have set up." That's pretty powerful. God's able to rescue me, but even if he don't, I'm not going to do what you want, because it wasn't right. See, the Lord has a way of working things out, and we know what happened to these three guys. We know what happened. Dr. Tony Evans was working at a bus stop on the night shift, trying to work his way through seminary. And folks, that's kind of a dose if you've ever been through seminary and you got a family and all, which he did. He was working at the bus stop unloading buses. And he was approached by the manager on that particular shift. He said, "Look, whenever so-and-so gets back, they're going to punch out for lunch, but what you're going to do is you're going to punch them in early so they can get some more sleep before they have to come back, and we do this for each other." Dr. Evans said, "Well, I can't do that. I'm a Christian. That would be stealing." And he said, "Okay." So every time the buses come in for somebody to unload the buses, nobody was there. Tony was the only one there unloading buses. So he was having to run from bus to bus to bus, unloading all these buses by himself, which took several men to do. This went on for a few weeks. And then Tony was called into the office. He said, "Well, what can I do for you, sir?" He said, "Well, look, we know that this scam is going on among all the people that are working there on the bus line. We know how you were done. So we're investigating it now, and we're dealing with it, but we want to make you the manager now over this particular shift." See, just when you think that people are getting away with something, They're not. The Lord's already got something orchestrated. Now, what would have happened if Tony had just got mad, pitched a fit, and walked off the job? He'd have missed the blessing. I'm not saying the Lord doesn't always want you to leave a job. I'm just saying be sure it's him telling you to leave the job and then wait for him to tell you when. He may want you to be right where you are in that situation. But anyway, our topic here in the last few minutes here is about being anxious, worried. You ever known somebody that worries about things, and when they can't worry about that, they go looking for something else to worry about? Because they're comfortable with worry. They want that tension. They've got to be wringing their hands and worried over something, and they don't feel like they're accomplishing anything. Well, my mother was like that. If she didn't have something to worry about and she couldn't find something to worry about, she'd create something to worry about. She had to be there. So what's the nuts and bolts of how you actually deal with being fearful and anxious? That's two of the most powerful weapons that Satan has in his arsenal against the Christian and your Christian walk is fear and anxiety. It has worked for thousands of years. And he has had thousands of years to observe human beings because he knows exactly how we work and he knows exactly what it will take to bring you down. So, anxiety and fear. Recognize that this has been two winning strategies that Satan has, is the anxiety and fear. Sometimes you need to talk yourself down out of the tree. You know, you're up there, you know you're fearful and anxious. How do you talk yourself down? You have to say, before this touched me, it went through God first. So whatever is happening has come into my life has been with God first. Now, one of the prohibitions that God made in the Sermon on the Mount was what? Don't fear. Take no thought for tomorrow. The lilies of the valley are clothed. You're much more important than they are. I'm going to take care of you. And that takes a childlike faith. So, the other thing that you might want to jot down is to humble yourself before God. 1 Peter 5, 6 through 7. Humble yourselves therefore under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time and cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Many of us will not do that because we're too prideful. I got this. I can handle this. I've taken care of things my entire life. I don't need anybody to help me with this. Listen, when I have that attitude, this is the Lord, this is me under God's hand. As long as I am obedient to him and I'm acknowledging that he is the only one that can help me out of this, the rain can come down, but the rain is not going to get me wet because I'm under his umbrella of protection. When I choose to worry, when I choose to handle things on my own, I'm walking out from underneath his hand. Anything can touch me at that point. Anxiety, fear, worry, I'm depressed, I can get sick, all those number of things. Now, I'm not saying you don't ever get sick here. I'm just saying that as long as I'm under his protective hand, it diminishes. I can rest no matter what comes. That's why the Apostle Paul said, I have learned in whatever state I am, therewith to be content, because I'm under his protection and umbrella. I'm sorry I'm having to cut this a little short. Humble yourselves under his rule, and he'll exalt you in due time. And it is God's responsibility. As long as you obey him, you can leave all the consequences to him. As long as you just blatantly trust him with what's going on. Leave all the consequences to him. Remember, trusting God is a choice that you make. It's not something that you have no choice about. If you choose to trust him when Satan comes to throwing these darts at you, when he tries to throw this anxiety at you, you'll say, not so, because it is written. Not so, because it is written. I guarantee you, if you'll use these scriptures against him, he's got to leave. He's going to leave you alone. And you'll start to feel at peace. I'm sorry I had to cut that so short. I took a lot more longer on explanation and illustration than I needed to, but I hope you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. If you're going through something right now that you're anxious about, that you're fearful about, and all of us face that, turn to the scriptures, trust him. He says, don't worry about it. And if he says don't worry about it, then you can rest in the fact that he is going to take care of whatever it is you're facing. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Our Father and our God, we needlessly worry. I've done it. Everybody sitting here has done it. But Lord, we worry because we choose to, not because we have to. You tell us in your scripture, Lord, that if we're heavy laden and burdened, that we can come to you and we can find rest. It is my prayer, Lord, if there's anybody that is under it right now, whatever it may be, whatever they're worried about, that they will, in faith, come to you and just take advantage of God's word. Get into God's word. Get into praying with you about whatever's going on. Put it at the foot of the cross and then walk away from it. I pray that they will do that this week so you can demonstrate to them that prayer works, that spending time with you works, that they can choose to leave their worry with you. I pray that they'll, by faith, put you to the test this week, Lord, and you can show them, Lord, that trusting God works. And I pray, Lord, if there's anybody